Well, if it's Wednesday morning, it's time for another episode of the About Mansfield Consumer Advice Series. I'm Steve Casillo, and I appreciate you being here today. Chances are, you're doing one of three things right now, or maybe four things. You are watching live on Facebook. You're watching the video on YouTube or LinkedIn. You're listening on the podcast player of your choice. Or the fourth item is you're preparing for tomorrow's rain. There you go. Today, as we do every Wednesday, we bring in our trademark attorney. That would be Susana Mahady. She is with Susana M. Mahady, the law offices of, and we talk about trademarks every other Tuesday right here on the podcast. And today we are talking about trademarks and how they evolved during the pandemic, because apparently there was an onslaught of trademark registration during the pandemic, and which I find interesting because everyone was locked up. And Susana, tell me about tell me about the how the trademarks evolved during the pandemic.
Well, like you said, we were all locked up. We were stuck at home, and that just created an environment where people had to rely on online shopping, right? So that only added to the importance of protecting people's brands. I mean, it grew significantly because there was a lot of new platforms, e-commerce platforms, a lot of new online marketplaces. And while that was a good thing, there was also an increase in infringement claims because there were a lot of people using other people's brands. People weren't properly searching the brand name to see if it was taken before they started using it. And also there was a lot of counterfeiting. And we saw it happen a lot, especially during the pandemic with the like in the health and wellness industry, because there were a lot of people creating. I don't know if you remember how there was a lot of hand sanitizer being sold, or
Lots of hand sanitizer.
yeah, the a lot of essential items that people needed during the pandemic. The personal protective equipment, the PPE, like the face mask and all that stuff. And so there was a lot of counterfeit goods and service goods really that were being sold on the internet during the pandemic.
And so people were going online. All right, I'm locked in place as we all were back in 2020 into 2021, and
Mhm.
so this is actually pretty smart then that people were creating online purchasing possibilities, and with that, they needed to trademark their company, their product, their brand.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why it became more important because there was such an onslaught of applications. And what happens is when people start, selling counterfeit products or using your name or your brand with low quality versions of your product, then it diminishes the value of your brand. And I think we saw that happening again with, the counterfeiting that was going on. And I think, it also, I think during the pandemic, consumers paid closer attention to brands once, it became known that people were selling, like for instance, the hand sanitizer or other type of wellness and health products that were not necessarily, legitimate or safe to use. And so I think, when you have those types of products out in the marketplace and people aren't really sure if they're buying the true item or if it's counterfeit, then they're taking a big risk in, determining whether it's safe to use or not.
Right. And I was seeing even way back in the when hand sanitizer became a premium because there just wasn't any out there, that some of the alcohol distilleries were making their own brand of hand sanitizer. The people who are making vodka and whiskeys, and I would assume they trademarked that. I don't know if that was because it was under their own brand, but would they need a trademark for something like that?
Remember that the trademark is protecting your brand, your name under either a good or service. And so there's different classes. And so if they were already selling items under a particular class, then they could still be protected. If they're adding a different type of service or a different type of product that falls under a different class, then yes, they would have to apply to protect their product under that name in that class. But I do think, yes.
And I wonder if the distilleries actually took the time to do a trademark, knowing that it was just going to be a temporary product.
Well, you never know if if you're planning to grow. I think it's something important to trademark anyway. If you're using it in commerce, you want to protect it, because down the line, if somebody starts using it and you didn't protect it, and then the consumer is confused because they don't know if it's your product or if it's somebody else's, and that's what you want to avoid by registering your trademark. You don't want the consumer to confuse your brand with somebody else's.
Sure. So Tito's, trademark trademark your Tito's hand sanitizer.
Really. But I think you're right. A lot of people didn't bother to do a good search. I mean, I think it was, there were almost 14 million trademark applications worldwide in 2021.
Wow.
And the Patent and Trademark Office reported that the US trademark filings were up more than 60% in the first 6 months of 2021. So that tells you how many new businesses or maybe existing businesses were finally registering their trademarks, or new businesses were registering their brand name because they were starting, an e-commerce shop or just jumping on the bandwagon and trying to start a business during the pandemic.
Sure, and that's what I've heard is that the pandemic, one of the, if you will say, benefits to come out of the pandemic was that a lot of people, that millions of people actually created home-based businesses. Exactly. And that's probably where those trademarks, a lot of those trademarks came from.
Right. People couldn't go to work, and some people just started getting creative. They also realized, it's kind of nice to be home and I could work from home. And so it definitely allowed for, the freedom to explore and try, either jumping on the bandwagon and starting your own e-commerce shop or business. And a lot of people continued those businesses after the pandemic. And that's why there was such a problem getting people to come back to work.
That's true. In the minute or so that we have left, is there anything that you want to add to this, or maybe to recap for the consumers out there?
And just as a recap, obviously the pandemic was not a pleasant thing. It was a bad thing for many people, but it also highlighted the importance of protecting your business and your brand. And with the shift to online sales and the increase in counterfeit and fraudulent products, the identity of the brand and their reputation became even more critical than ever before. And so that's just to highlight the importance of making sure that if you're using a name or a brand for your business, you should protect it.
And if someone wanted to reach out to Susana Mahady regarding the protection of their own brand, how can you help them, and how can they reach out to you?
They could contact me through my website, which is mahadylaw.com, or you can email me directly at smahady@mahadylaw.com, and that's spelled MAHADYLAW.com.
Mahadylaw.com. That is what we call our 10-minute nugget of information. We do this every other week right here on live on Facebook, or the video on YouTube or LinkedIn. And you could be listening right here on your favorite podcast player. Susana, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Stay dry and stay warm.
Thank you so much. You stay dry as well. I know it's coming to you.
That's right.